Good morning. Welcome back to the Old Shed Workshop. Today I want to share with you how I make a charcuterie board. I know that there are many videos out there where guys make charcuterie boards, but I want to share with you my take, which is a little different in that I embed glassware into the board. Not permanently, but so that it can't fall off the board while it's being used. If this is your first time here, my name is Mike. And I'd appreciate it if you'd take the time to like and subscribe. You folks out there that have been liking and subscribing to my channel and spending some time watching my videos have really been helping me to grow my channel. Let me show you the wood selection for this project. These are the colors that I've chosen for this project. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I like to try to cut my pieces to a workable length, a little bit longer than what the finished length will be. These pieces have all been cut to an easy workable length. The colors I've chosen this time are walnut, canary wood, another strip of walnut. I have purple heart, and the centerpiece is cherry. Initially, I wanted to try to incorporate some curly maple into this somehow, but I realized I needed to stay with the warm colors. The purple heart really sets off the cherry, and it goes well with the walnut. It goes well with the canary wood. It really brings out the beautiful colors in the canary wood, the purples and the reds. All right, let's glue it up. I'm ready to start gluing up my work pieces. I'll show you briefly what my process is. I use all Type Bond products. Anything that could be subjected to water or moisture, I use Type Bond Ultimate 3. I pour it into a smaller container. This is a little 6-ounce container. I just find it easier to work with. The way I do this is I glue both sides of the pieces. You can never have enough glue and clamps. Glue is cheap. Lay it on there pretty good. I can tell you that I've never had anything I've made come apart. I lay it in really well with my finger. I think I get nice distribution of the glue. Sometimes I'll use an acid brush. They're nice. You can rinse them out, or you can just throw them away. They're relatively inexpensive. So I'll continue this process. Before I tighten up the clamps, I'll show you something else that I like to make a habit of when I tighten up the clamps. Well, I have the opportunity. I'm going to take off some of the excess glue. This all comes off in the planing process, but you can get a little bit off while you have the opportunity. It's not a bad thing. What I like to do before I tighten the clamps, first thing I do is I bring the end clamps in just till they start to tighten up. I take a piece of scrap wood and a mallet, and I tap the pieces down. You want all the pieces to try to sit as flat as possible against the pipe clamps. I like black pipe clamps. I feel that they give you a lot of clamping power, and I've used them for years doing this stuff. So what I do is I take the scrap, and I tap all the pieces down. What you're trying to do is you're trying to avoid a wavy clamp job, because if your pieces are wavy and you have to keep planing them, you're going to end up taking off a lot more material than you want to, which also means that your finished piece doesn't have the thickness that you were trying to get. Just tap everything down. And if you've noticed in any of my other videos, I try to start with an edge relatively straight so that when I trim to finished length, I'm not wasting a lot of material. This is why right from the beginning, I try to cut my pieces to what I call an easy workable length. That's the reason. So you're not wasting material. Now, the reason why I only snug the clamps up is that the natural viscosity of the glue will tend to make the work pieces try to skate. So if I just bring a little tension up, then I can bring tension up on the other clamps and then get them to where I finally want them. I'm going to add a couple of more clamps and then I'll let it sit until tomorrow. The board's been sitting overnight. Time to take the clamps off. Here's our workpiece. Next step is planing. I have my planer all set up. The canary wood was a little thicker than the other woods. I've got to plane those down. I gave the board a light sanding just out to 120, just to take the rough edges off. You can see that the ends aren't really square, but because of the fact that I trim them to an easy workable length, I don't have to take off a lot of material to square them up. I have my sled set up. Let me turn on my two-stage dust collection system and we'll trim these edges up. Now I'm ready to lay out the positioning of the glassware. I'm ready to start laying out the positions for my glassware. I use these two marking gauges. This is a 3-inch, this is a 6-inch. These have holes in every increment out to 64ths of an inch, which makes it extremely handy for layout. So the first piece of glassware is going to be 2.5 inches in by 2.5 inches in from this edge. That's it, all marked out. The next piece that's going on this corner is 1.5 inches in by 1.5 inches. The piece that's going in this corner is 3.5 inches in with 3.5 by 3.5. I use the 6-inch gauge for this. Okay, there's that mark. The last mark is 8 1/8 in. Leave that mark. Again, always bring your straight edge up to the pencil. There's that mark by 2.5 inches in. There's your mark. Okay. Next step is to go over to the drill press to bore these holes. I'm over at the drill press now. I'm going to turn on my dust collection system and then do the first hole. Here's the first one. I'm ready to do the second boring for a dish. I'd like to mention that this is a variable speed drill press, and with these larger Forstner bits, this one's 3-inch. The first one was 1 3/8 inches. You have to run the drill press on a very low speed because the Forstner bit will want to try to skate. I'm sure you noticed that when I started boring that blind hole, I was using this Forstner bit. I had no sooner talked about the fact that sometimes with a large size bit, the bit might tend to try to skate. That's why it's necessary to run your drill press on a low speed. The biggest contributing factor to that, in my experience, is the hardness of the wood, the different types of wood you're using in a particular project. I ran into that problem myself in trying to bore that blind hole. So I took this bit out, I sharpened it, put it back in, tried it again. It still wouldn't cut. It still wanted to skate. I had to stop my process and order another bit. This is also a Forstner bit. It's just a different configuration. 3.5 inch that I have by this manufacturer does an excellent job. So I bought the 3-inch one from the same manufacturer, put it in, and was able to finish boring that blind hole in less than a minute. I want to include this so you realize it's not a mistake. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just the nature of this type of animal. This would probably be fine in a softer wood, but it just couldn't cut it, pun intended, with the harder woods. This bit went right through. Let me finish boring the last blind hole. I couldn't make this last cut with my fence on my drill press tables. I had to remove it and find another method to use my dust collection system. I have my router table all set up with a round over bit already installed. I've done a test cut for my depth, and I'm ready to now round over all the edges of the board. Now off for some sanding. I finished sanding. As you recall, I had sanded out to 120. I've since sanded to 150, then 180, then 220. I've cleaned everything off. It's dust free, and I'm ready to put on the finish. What I use is made by Walrus Oil. It's their brand of cutting board oil. So let's watch all these beautiful woods come to life. I know you're wondering, what's the idea of boring the blind holes? I'm going to share that with you when we flip it over to the other side. Put this on liberally because the first coat tends to absorb right into the wood fairly quickly. You can see these beautiful woods just really come to life. I use a piece of an old face cloth or an old towel. I would recommend not using t-shirt material, that type of cotton. It just doesn't have the same type of absorbency. It doesn't hold on to the oil the same way. Whereas a piece of an old face cloth or even a microfiber, I find to be better for this. Now let's flip over and wake up this other side. Make sure you get into these blind holes really well. And remember to tell whoever you've made this for or whoever you sell it to not to put this in a dishwasher. You don't want to put any of these items into a dishwasher. Any of the things that I make that could be exposed to water or moisture, I put this oil on them, whether it be a cutting board, a charcuterie board, beer flight, shooter flight, anything exposed to water. And don't put any of them ever into a dishwasher. You see these colors just really come to life. Again, the woods in this project, walnut, canary wood, walnut again, purple heart, and cherry. And then it repeats going the other way. Purple heart, walnut, canary, walnut. I appreciate you guys staying with me through the course of this project. I'll put links below that you can use if you're interested in any of the items that I've used in this project. Here's the reason why I've developed my take on the charcuterie board. The oil's all dry, and I place these bowls into the blind holes. Standard shooter glass goes in this hole. Toothpicks go in here. This bowl I put cocktail sauce in, and when I made the first one of these, I calculated the distance, go figure, right, to put shrimp around here. This one, I would typically put pepperoncinis, olives, smaller sized pickles, and then this shallow dish goes in this slot. I would lay out my herbs and olive oil, pieces of Italian bread around here, and then lay out the board the way you typically would. You don't have to use this for cocktail sauce and shrimp. You can do whatever you want, but it's just my take on a board that so many other people out there are making. It's just my take to make it different. Thanks for staying through this project. It was a fun project. This one happens to be a commission job that I made for somebody for a Christmas gift. We'll see you on the next one.